I think we got thumbs up from Stan back there. So I want to thank everyone for coming out today. This is the Greater Cincinnati Move to Amend public meeting. We're hosting these once a month. We moved to the Chameleon earlier this year, I think starting in February. We were having public meetings at a local Unitarian church last fall, so we're very glad to have you here, and hopefully you'll tell your friends, and maybe they'll come out on the 3rd or 4th Sunday from 3 to 5 at the Chameleon in some of these upcoming months. Next month we have a program from Common Cause. Catherine Tercer, she's coming down from Columbus. She'll be talking about how big money affects the common good, which is not in a positive way. And we've got some yummy food coming in here. Another benefit of being here is that it's an option to order tasty food and drink. I think these are the vegetarian pizza slices coming out.
These two.
All right.
Vegetarian?
So, I have been asked by Dick Galloway, one of our founding members, if he could have just 2 to 3 minutes of floor time to tell us a little bit about a raffle. Dick, do you want to come on up?
So first of all, let me say that the Better Angels meeting last night was outstanding. There were, 150, 200 people there, something like that. And it went really well, and I was glad to be there because I've heard the two of you talk about it all the time, so it's nice to be there. Now, so we're going to have a little raffle today. I was hoping there were going to be hundreds of people here like there were last night. So here's the thing, okay, if whoever answers the question gets one of the buttons, okay? If you've already got one, that's okay. I take it and give it to a friend. But when you take it, that is a promise that you'll wear it. Because this is like I said last night, this is wearing the bullseye, and it does get attention. It gives you a way to start the conversation. Okay, my first question is, if we want to get big money out of politics, why do we have to do more than end Citizens United? Come on, people.
Well, it's just a small, tiny leak compared to all the other money that's coming in.
There you go. You are the first prize winner. You lucky duck. You lucky duck. Okay, now.
You need also a group of terrifically smart lawyers so they can't turn everything on its head again.
Yeah, that too. Okay. Now, the second question is, why is it important, I think critical, to make breaking the link between, breaking the notion of corporate personhood? Why is that critical if we want to get big money out of politics? Anybody?
They pretend they're people, and so they try and get constitutional rights that were never written into the Constitution for them.
Corporation.
Come on.
Because they use that right as a person to basically bring down actual people.
Okay, say that again, because I couldn't hear it.
They pretend to be actual people so that they can beat up on actual people. And that's the problem is if you've got, an oil company in your backyard and you don't want them drilling there, but they can pretend that they're an actual person and it's their property and you're looking at property rights.
Okay, thank you. It allows them, where most of these things happen, they happen in court, where people don't usually see them. And it really is at least the co-equal with the money equals speech thing. Okay. Now I know that we've had this talk with Bill a number of times. Let me say, just to be clear, artificial legal entities like corporations, unions, nonprofits, PACs, etc. So, okay, now the final question is, why does it have to be an amendment if we want to solve these problems?
It wouldn't be constitutional without an amendment.
God, I think he's going to get another buck.
I've
I
got
don't think so. No, he can do better than that.
Okay, so somebody else? Would our guests like to respond?
I'm not really sure. It obviously, to be an amendment, it becomes part of law, and then it's enforceable.
Okay. Because, and you got it right too, Bill, if you try to go against, it's not really law. These are not legislative pieces of decisions. They're legal through the Supreme Court. And the only way to achieve the goal is to make it a constitutional amendment. We could try passing legislation, but they'd overturn it before they try. I took more than my 3 minutes, I beg your pardon.
I would also say that we can't do this by statute. You can't hear me? I would say you can't do this by statute, because statute can be overturned. It can be overturned in states, it can be turned, even laws passed by Congress are essentially, they're laws, they're statutes, they can be overturned. Overturning a constitutional amendment is a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, and if you have a judicial opinion or judgment or ruling, that's very different from having 2/3 of the House of Representatives and the Senate vote for this and 3/4 of the states. That's an overwhelming majority, that's a super majority. And I think Dick Galloway is all about why aren't the thoughts and the interests of the super majorities really being listened to, and it seems to be big money in politics. So, I would like to introduce Rob Weidenfeld. He is a member of Better Angels, one of our 2 Better Angels in the room with Bill Fry here. Very glad to have both. And he's going to tell us a little bit about our speaker day, Wave Warritk.
Okay. Thank you, Deborah. What I'm going to do first before I introduce our speaker is I was explaining to a few because of my disorganization, I didn't bring agendas for people, and I didn't bring a copy of what Better Angels was. Everyone except one of us was here, so well, Stan makes 2, but I want to go through what the agenda essentially is. We are first, well, Ray is going to be speaking, and we essentially allotted him a half an hour, but that's very flexible. So if there's a lot of questions and you have a little bit longer to go or a little shorter, that's fine. And right after that, we're going to have a review of Lobby Day, which was attended by Peter and Naomi and Deborah and myself. And we'll talk about what happened during that time. I was going to include a discussion of the Better Angels gathering on Friday, but again, it's going to be limited because most of us were there. Peter, you weren't there for very long, so you missed some of it. So we'll still do that. And essentially, we're going to have questions and answers, and then we're going to be concluded. And I think that we can pretty much be concluded by 4:30. And then there's a couple of notices which I'll mention later on in the meeting. One about next month's meeting, and maybe a little greater detail about Catherine Tercer, who she is, what she does, and then about our national convention, Move to Amend, which is at the same time as the Better Angels Convention, but in a different part of the country. So let me begin by introducing Ray. I met Ray at a meeting, it was maybe 6 months ago. He came to a Better Angels meeting, and he actually came with a list of items that he felt needed to be corrected within the federal government. And just about every one item on the list, if I am not mistaken, had to do with money and its effect on how it's affecting what legislators are doing. They were all very different, but they essentially boil down to money in many aspects. But Ray, I'm going to read from some of his biography, since you don't have it in front of you. He spent years in the private sector and in both public and private companies. He's also been a business owner, coach, and consultant. Ray's a long-time frustration with government interference in commerce, banking, healthcare, and education. He believes in free markets, fiscal responsibility, and limited government. By the way, are you a long-time resident of Warren County? Were you born and raised there?
No, lived there probably a dozen years.
About a dozen years. Okay, well, moving on, he believes in natural rights that are God-given, and in 2000, Ray became a founding leader in the local area Tea Party group, 2009, and in 2014, he was elected chair of the Warren County Republican Party. He also served as fiscal officer, chief fiscal officer in Hamilton Township. Is that correct?
Yep.
And long story short, that during that time, When he was elected chair of the party in 2014, the grassroots Tea Party people took control of the party, much to the chagrin of the establishment. And I assume that's the Republican establishment.
Is indeed.
Okay. And Ray's also a member of Better Angels, and he has worked cooperatively with Blues and Reds to help us formulate an action plan, which we're going to be talking just briefly about a little bit later. So with that, I would say Ray he's got some fantastic ideas, and I'm very happy. I'm only regretting, Ray, that we couldn't have more people here for you, but we can't control that, so I give you the floor. Thank you.
Thanks. I've got this gizmo.
Oh, that's right, that's right. Leave this over here.
You don't mind, I'm gonna bring my water up here. I'm suffering from allergies. It didn't help that we were all out in the hayfield on Friday night for a few hours. At church this morning, our pastor was talking about different types of religion and how they go about it and how they view who their God might be. And he made a very good point. He said, you know, we have to be very gracious of the way others practice their religion. We have to search to understand that. We don't have to necessarily agree, but it takes us nowhere to disagree. We have to understand the way that other religions view themselves and the way they practice. I thought that was kind of timely when I thought about coming over here this afternoon. I was a lifelong Republican. I always voted R. I wrote checks to the R's. I didn't know these people. I just, from childhood, was a Republican, and basically because I believed that the Republicans stood for smaller government. I just happen to believe that every time government grows, the private sector shrinks. And when that shrinks, our liberties shrink. So I just blindly, you know, I was just busy having a career and doing all the things that people do. So I just voted R all the time. Until I started paying more attention and seeing some of the things the R's were doing that I just didn't agree with. I didn't see that they were principled in the concept of limited government. Many of the initiatives that they carried out made the government bigger and more expensive and more intrusive. So I began to get somewhat disgruntled. I was still voting for them. And then the Tea Party movement came along, as Rob mentioned, in 2009. And I'll never forget, on March 15, 2009, there was going to be a rally on Fountain Square because somebody was trying to form the Cincinnati Tea Party. I said to my wife, well, let's go down to that. We'll probably be the only ones there, but I'd like to see what that's all about. There were 5,000 people there. Literally came to an event that was arranged about the week before, under the sentiments of we were just tired with the way things were going. Now, I want to make a distinction of that period of time because many folks thought, and probably believed, that the reason for the Tea Party was because Obama had been elected president. I didn't see it that way at all. I was in the Tea Party because of George W. Bush and the crazy stuff that he did as a supposed Republican. Just to highlight, you remember the end of his reign of terror, that bailout and deciding which banks could stay in business after the housing bust. The way they went about financing that, taking your mortgages and busting them up into those derivatives, was criminal. And I think some people should have went to jail over that. The other thing, George W. took us into Iraq and Afghanistan. We're still there. Those aren't wars. Those are political board games, I think. And they send our young people off put their lives on the line, and then some politicians in Washington come up with rules of engagement. Rules of engagement in a war. The other side doesn't use that. So those are just criminal in my mind. So I had enough. And we went down there on March 15, 2009 and signed up. They had an event that was coming up on April 15, 2009 on tax day. I was invited to speak at that. It was on Fountain Square again. And there was a lot of Obama bashing, just generally speaking in the crowd and about. Once again, I was like, I don't think you folks get it. Obama was just in, like, I don't know what Obama was going to do. Now, I will be clear, I wasn't pleased with much Obama did, but I certainly wasn't in the Tea Party because of him. The Tea Party tried to feel its way. What are we going to do? There's a group. One of the things was, we need to get more people to run for office. The other was, if you take over enough precinct seats in a county, then you can select the leadership of a political party. So we formed a group in Warrick County. The sole purpose was to take over the Republican Party. Never thought we could do it. We got some people elected, so we had enough seats to be there, but we also had to attract some votes from other people. I was not elected, because my neighbor is the precinct captain, and he had been for some time. I didn't run against him. So they have a thing where they can install you at large, and then you're in the party. So we go to the reorganization night when they are electing new leaders, and we started winning every vote. I got put in at large. I was able to run for chair of the party, and I won. At the first party meeting I ever attended, I became the chairman. The establishment Republicans lost their mind. Because we required them to stick to the principles that are in the Republican platform, that I don't think many of you folks would agree with. There was a platform, and we insisted upon it. They tried to recall me, I think, in the second meeting. That was because I wanted to force a vote of non-endorsement for John Kasich, who happens to be a very good Democrat. And so they had this little movement. The guy came up and read all this terrible stuff about me. Some of it was true. Anyway, they wanted to have a vote to discredit me, or I can't remember what they called it. So I left the meeting and said, you know, have your vote, I don't care. Well, I won the vote that night also by a bigger margin than when I won the vote to take over the party. These establishment political party people on both sides only care about money and power. They don't care about what we think. They don't care about pushing, sticking to principles we believe in. They don't care about maybe pushing the initiative that we want. They're in it for money, for themselves. Now I'm generalizing, to be sure, but There's only a handful that wouldn't fit that. It's kind of like somebody wants to run for office and they show up and they're holding an oar, a rowing oar, and they say, elect me into this boat and I will row this boat the way you want me to. I'll take us in the direction you want me to. Until you put them in the boat. Then they row out, and to go in the direction, there's some real choppy water up there. So, well, we're going to have to go through that choppy water to achieve our goal. Well, the people on the right, the reds, that we put in the boat, they get up to the choppy water and go, well, you know, it's complicated. Today's not the right day to do that. We did, you know, we just don't think we can move that quick. We might overplay our hand. What they really mean is, if I take my little boat closer to that choppy water, it might tip over and throw me out of the boat. And the most important thing to me in my life is staying in that boat. The blues, they'll row up to that choppy water. You'll say, let's go. Take us through the choppy water. We need to get where we want to be. They are usually like, you know what? No, we need that choppy water because we're going to run again and again telling you how we're going to save you from that choppy water. So they both play it the same way. They're not going to take us to where we want to go. And they quickly get bought off. It's, and from being involved with Tea Party, being involved with Republican Party, being in local government, both as a fiscal officer and as a township administrator, I know every politician that has anything to do with me just about. The morning after I became chair of the Republican Party, the first phone call I got was from Mike DeWine. Great. Mike DeWine.
What did he want from you?
He just said how great it was and how did you do it and that. And then a couple days later I get a call from Steve Shabbat. He said, Ray, we got a private box for the Reds game Friday night. Why don't you and your wife join us? I said, absolutely not. They didn't get it. They were stunned. I would have a lady from the Ohio Republican Party called me up and said, congratulations, Mr. Chairman. Here's what we need you to do. Started listing off some stuff. I said, whoa, stop. I'm not going to do any of that. She was stunned. I said, no. She said, well, then what can we do for you? I said, why don't you send us some money? I said, what you don't understand, ma'am, is you work for me. I don't work for you. One of the things that I guess I would ask you to consider is really the whole concept of our republic. It's not a democracy, it's a republic. And our forefathers, they designed it. What they meant was the grassroots. We would govern from the bottom to the top. That changed as soon as the ink was dried on the Constitution. I think more people have to take the attitude that those elected officials work for us. They serve us. I don't need to be going to any baseball games with Steve Shabbat. He should call and ask me if he's allowed to go to the game, quite frankly. The thing about money, wouldn't it be great if we just had principled people who weren't swayed by the money? Wouldn't that be wonderful? Human nature, unfortunately, just doesn't work that way. It runs everything. Think how many bills are before Congress right now in all those various committees. Think how many bills are in Columbus, Ohio right now in all those committees. How many bills have each of you asked and have up there? Except for you're trying to work on move to amend. What about all the bills that are going on there now? Can you name a few of them? Why are those bills there?
Somebody important ones, somebody with money.
Yes,
They were all brought by special interests.
somebody is paying to get those things done. That's the problem. The other problem is, it is completely legal for them to be completely corrupt. Why do they pass laws that pertain to us and not them? How can somebody go into Congress after being a school teacher and become a multimillionaire? How does that happen? What's a congressperson make? $174,000 a year, but has to travel back and forth. $174,000. Not. I've made more money than that. I don't have multi-millions. How does that happen? Why don't we question that? We get caught up in, have you heard the concept, the Overton window? You ought to look that up sometime. Overton window is a concept where to win your argument, you take people into the window. And as an example, trying to think of a good example. If I said, I don't think we should kill people. And the person over here said, yeah, I think we should be allowed to kill people. But then the argument starts where the people that want to kill people, this is an extreme example, they say, they want to move us into their Overton window. They say, all right, we will not kill people on Thursday or Tuesday or Thursday. And then we're supposed to have this debate, this negotiation about what days we can kill people. Much of what goes on in the discourse of debating things ends up in these Overton windows. Now I think that probably has to work that way in some cases, but let's at least recognize when we're in an Overton window. The other thing is about government. Once again, it's human nature. When I became fiscal officer in Hamilton Township, and once again, a job I didn't even want, but our township got in terrible financial condition, and I went in and helped them out, and then they made me fiscal officer. I had been a big critic of the Board of Trustees and the things they were doing with the finance. Critical. As soon as I was sworn in as the fiscal officer, some of the people that worked in the township said, well, now, Ray, you have to realize you're one of us. Oh my.
Interesting.
You're one of us. I must have said at least 2 or 3 times a week in my 4 years around the township, it's not our money. Now, to be sure, human nature says if we're going to be affiliated with a group, we want the group to get bigger. Any corporate workout I ever had. No one ever said, Ray, could you go and take over this company and make it smaller? Make it less profitable? So in the government doesn't work on profit, they just take your money. But they want to be bigger. They want to have more things. They want to rule over more things. Very dangerous. But if you're in the industry or government, and you're a government employee, and that's your career, you have to understand. I had to learn to understand the human nature of it. But because when I was administrator, I had a police chief, a fire chief, a public works director. Police chief always wanted more cops. Fire chief wanted more firefighters. Public works wanted more road workers. They all wanted more trucks and cars. Every day, every week. And I would have to make the point to them, I'd love for you to have all that stuff too. But the township is operating properly. We don't have a shortfall in police protection or fire protection. We have some shortfall in the roads, but that's because of Kasich, that Democrat. You know, and I shouldn't do that. I shouldn't blame Democrats for him. That guy's crazy. But to contain government and keep it efficient and make it so it's not so wasteful, those are the things that have to be done. Very hard to do. When I think about it, that's their job, that's our job. So I don't know the answer to that. But in the example I'm using, doing police work, fire work, public works, those are productive activities that must be carried out. The stuff that goes on in Congress and the State House in Columbus is not productive things that need to be carried out. Those are just things where the little representatives stand on the street corner waiting for their bag of money to do the bidding for somebody who doesn't know me and you. I'm overplaying that to a great extent, but not that great, unfortunately. I was up in Columbus last year. I went up to testify at one of these committee hearings. And I stayed overnight because I had something the next day. So I went to a restaurant. Oh, when I was after the hearing, I went into the Senate. They were in session. And because a neighbor of mine got elected to the Senate, so I went in there to watch him in action. Oh boy.
Steve Wilson?
Yeah. Nice guy.
Yeah.
You got to get him out of there. And these weren't other senators he was with. These weren't his lifestyle coaches. They were lobbyists. So that's how they get trained. And I think that's the reality. Now, if we get money out of the election process, which is what Move to Amend, Better Angels Initiative, No Ballot, No Vote, I think that's a worthy thing to do. But if we do that, which means we may have more control over who we elect, then by God, let's elect better people. Let's see if we can do that. Because that's really what we're trying to do, isn't it? And I just think that's vital.
Just one quick note. By better people, you mean people who are not being elected because of the large amount of money going into their campaign? Is that what you mean by better people?
Yeah, I think so. And
Virtues.
yeah,
Principles.
ethical, moral, legal.
Honest.
honest, yeah, those things.
Truthful.
And the other thing is, if we did get the money out of the process, could we get more Americans to get involved in the process?
Care.
I think that would be the other upside of this, because now nobody votes. And when they do, they vote for the name IDs #1. And then the money spent to get a name propped up is #2. And they don't know the person from Adam. And I know from just retrospect now, since I walked so far into the flames, there were plenty of people I voted for that I never would again. Not in a million years. So the differences between the right and the left, you know, there's some ideology there that we just will never agree on. But in days gone, days in the past, it was quite a bit more civil. There was a little more substance or intellect to the debate. Now it's just a bunch of very angry third graders. And it is so ridiculous that most people aren't watching it at all. People like us, we do. And it's unsettling to me. It's unsettling some of the people that are in these positions of power. It's unsettling to me because I think we always have that, you know, if somebody's in a position of importance, they must be smart, they must be honest, they must be hardworking. You know, generally that's what I thought, and then when I started meeting some of those people, oh my goodness. They weren't smart, they weren't honest. I used to do a presentation at Tea Party meetings where I had this measuring device from dishonesty to, well, clueless to dishonest. And trying to rate where a politician was why they were doing it, whether they just totally clueless, were they just totally dishonest, or somewhere in between. Pretty cynical way to look at it, but that was my experience in engaging with some of these folks. So, you know, I was thinking about this at church this morning. Just think, every weekend, be it a Friday, a Saturday, or a Sunday, depending on where and how you worship, every weekend in this country, people gather at churches and temples and synagogues all across this nation. Voluntarily. Nobody makes them go there. Nobody makes them give money. And they participate. And it goes on. We have more types of places of religion in this country than anywhere else. People who are seeking out affiliation with their religion voluntarily. Now, sometimes my wife makes me go when I don't want to go, but voluntarily. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. What are we going to do voluntarily? You folks are doing something. A lot of Tea Party folks were doing something. Sticking to it is very hard. Very, very hard. Because, and I've told this to the Better Angels gang, if you get this no ballot, no buck off the ground and we really make a splash with it, the Democrat establishment, the Republican establishment, they're going to both come squeezing in. And they're going to do their thing like they used to do to me. First they'll say, what do you want? What can we give you? Can we give you a baseball game with Shabbat?
No.
You don't like baseball? And then they will threaten. I've had people threaten me. All of that stuff goes on. I've had people drive up in front of my house and get pictures. So that's what, if it makes a splash, that's what's going to happen. They're going to come running because the last thing they want is you to throw them out of that boat you put them in. And you have to be ready for it. To be successful, to move the needle. Part of our problem in this country is the price of affluence. We're pretty rich. I don't know how many of you have traveled to other countries, I'm sure you have. And even in some delightful places I've been to, it's not the United States of America. And so we have way more than we need when you look at a needs basis. I can't even tell you how many TVs I have in my house. I can only watch one. But we can't. And it's going to be, I think, little gatherings like this, it's going to have to come together. The Better Angels concept is very interesting and very challenging. I don't know if it'll make it. I'm going to go to St. Louis, and I hope it makes it, because if we could get some reds and blues, as the Better Angels call us, to come together on a couple of these things and make a splash, make some noise, then we may have something. It's got a voice. I used to get a lot of press when I took over the Warren County Republican Party because I was just too good to be true to a liberal media. Here's a Republican chairman who constantly criticizes Republicans. They loved it. They loved me. The same thing could happen for Better Angels. A group where reds and blues are together and they're just questioning everything. Now, sooner or later they'll turn themselves inside out at the prospects of that. But I think that's how you can make some movement. I'm going to finish with this. You don't have to agree with me. I don't agree with anything I say. Most places I go, they don't agree with me even when they're supposed to. Those Warren County Republicans, I don't think they ever agreed with me. Were you on Central Committee, Bill, when I was doing it?
Did he vote for you?
I don't know.
No fair asking, right?
I didn't give him any money. The Declaration of Independence, you know, the famous line, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We hold these truths to be self-evident. They didn't come from Congress. They didn't come from George Washington, Thomas Jefferson. They didn't come from John Kasich. They're self-evident that all men are created equal. Not the same, equal. That means you have no right to rule over me, Peter, and I have no right to rule over you.
Oh, shit.
You're out of the boat.
Can you believe that?
It's as simple as that. And an unalienable right is a right that cannot be created nor destroyed. It's like the matter of this earth. It cannot be created nor destroyed. And I think that everybody needs to consider that and recognize that. And these rights that are ours, and I'm a Christian, they're given to me by God. And A government can't get in the way of those things. Even our government. We wrote things into our Constitution and our laws that did not work because they were against natural law, slavery. I can't own Peter, he can't own me. It had to go away. This business where only one of the genders could vote. It's not natural. It had to go away. And it did. And I think if we could step back and recognize how simple those concepts were, and that our founding fathers meant it, that those who govern can only do so with the consent of the governed. And we, as the governed, we need to start to do our job. Those people work for us. And back when the Tea Party was in its heyday, we would have these gatherings, and you know, when you do a Democrat or a Republican meeting, you spend a half hour, oh, and the mayor of Silverton, and then, you know, it takes you all day to recognize everybody in the audience. And Tea Party, back in the beginning, all the elected officials, the Republicans, would all come running to it, because they all said one thing: I was Tea Party before there was a Tea Party. No, you weren't. So what a lady, she was running this big meeting in Columbus, sponsored by the Tea Party, and a lot of elected officials there. And what she did was she went around the room and she introduced Tea Party leaders. Oh, here's so-and-so who runs the Tea Party in Mansfield, and here from Toledo. She named off all the Tea Party people, and then she simply said, oh, and I want to recognize the hired help. Could the hired help please stand up?
Oh, cool.
What a great day. And they did. Anyway, thanks for asking me to join you. I appreciate it. I don't know if any of that was helpful, but
I'm sure you're going to have questions.
okay. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was especially interested in the introduction. You
alluded to God-given rights. I'm very interested in the whole discourse of rights, and I wish you'd sort of spell out what sort of things you think are legitimate rights and are not rights.
Well, it's life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. Pursuit of happiness gets a little tricky because in my pursuit of happiness I've gone off the path a time or two. It's as simple as that.
Well, I'm thinking of things like civil rights, and to me a right is something, I mean, I don't use the discourse of God-given, but it's something that actually people have struggled for. Even you gave the example of the right to vote is something that was not, at the outset of this country, God-given, but it was something that people fought for almost 100 years. And one of the things that I at least thought was the most positive contribution of Bernie Sanders was to introduce the notion of right to health care. More and more people will say that that's something that if you have a decent society, you have a right to not die in the street. But anyway, I'm just curious how far you would push that notion.
I wouldn't get anywhere near that. Health care is not a natural right.
Actually, the UN says it is.
The who?
The United Nations actually says that it is. They've had a full motion about like 8 years ago, and it is considered a human right now.
The United Nations, I'm talking about the writings of our founding fathers there, not the United Nations.
So first an observation, one of the
Hold it
things,
up, hold it up.
one of the things that I've heard that I think is really, when you were talking about the people respond. And a lot of people say, well, you know, democracy has failed us. And the response is, no, we have failed democracy. We haven't done our job as the citizens to make sure that our representatives represent us. And I think that's very helpful. Now, my question is specifically, okay, I couldn't argue any of the stuff about government overextension and trying to get the, do a lot of things that, shouldn't even be on the agenda, okay? What I find missing in that, at least from my perspective, is that's only one side of the picture. The other side of the picture is all of these rich people and lobbyists who are buying our government. Where did that money come from? At least in part, from my point of view, is that a lot of that money came from the tax give back, starting with Reagan, and it did not create jobs, it did not trickle down, and it actually resulted in the export of American jobs. So I think from my perspective, I absolutely agree with you, but I think it's very important to make sure that both sides of that seesaw are addressed directly, and that we talk about, as a progressive, a lot of people say, oh, you're the kind of people, you're against corporations like Bernie and Elizabeth and so forth. And I think the answer to that is, no, we're not against corporations.
They may not have.
But when they become abusive to the good of the people, then it's another thing. So I kind of rambled on, which I often do. Your response?
Over here.
I agree.
Ray, correct me if I'm wrong. As I understand, alienable rights are rights that we get from God or from just being born. And they're rights that do not take anything from any other person, such as when you talk about health care. That requires a doctor to give up his time and to accept whatever money the government or whatever I want to give him for his services, which makes it not an alienable right, because now we're taking from another person to deliver that right to me.
Or the other person is giving that to us, yes.
Or giving it.
An alienable right is what you just said.
Nothing's given,
Nothing's required.
taken.
Yeah, nothing's required. It is.
So in that sense, what about the thought that public health care or health insurance is a public good? If you think about insurance as meant to be taking a large number of people and dividing the risk over a large pool of people so that the individual doesn't have lots of risk because you spread it over the many. So would you consider that a public good rather than a public right?
It's a market good. Health care wouldn't be so expensive and so screwed up if we let it be more market-based. Because what you're describing is the actuarial context of insurance. And there's got to be a way to spread it across, or we'll never be able to do it.
Okay, I'd like to go. In the book, Corporations Are Not People by Jeffrey Clements, who was actually one of the original co-founders of Move to Amend, and then moved to American Promise, which appears to be trying to accomplish essentially the same goal, but not quite so aligned with progressive groups. That's American Promise. He suggests that sometimes the lack of government sometimes is just an excuse, not an excuse, but allows the infiltration of large amounts of money to subvert the Constitution. And I'll give you an example. A community which has an industry which is dumping toxic waste in the community. The community objects, raises issue with the EPA. The EPA comes in and wants to condemn the actions of the corporation, which is affecting the lifestyle and the health of the people in the community, including the children. But then the corporation goes to court after contributing a large amount of money to the local politicians, but goes to court and declares a constitutional right, the right to not have their records accessed because of the Fifth Amendment. Or they declare another constitutional right, the 14th Amendment, which enables them to be treated as real people, not as slaves. So what essentially happens is that lack of government from the EPA or some other government entity actually allows the corporations to control what is happening. So what would be your response to that?
Well, I don't know that I disagree with any of that at all. Corporation wouldn't be nice if they all behaved and we didn't have a rush of money come in and subvert the Constitution. Yeah, I don't know that I disagree with any of that.
Going back to healthcare and some other things, and you are inherently against big government. The problem we have in this country is that there are some areas that it's not efficient for the government to be running, such as healthcare. We are the only developed nation that does not have universal healthcare. We pay twice as much as everyone else with the market-based system, such as our prison system. I believe we are the only country in the world with a private prison system, and we have more prisoners per capita than anyone else on the planet. We cannot continue having privatized industries that are inherently never meant to be privatized. It doesn't make sense. Our roads shouldn't be private, our healthcare shouldn't be privatized, surely not our prison systems, schools should not be privatized. The entire situation with charter schools is creating wealth inequality within our school system, and these are all attempts to privatize what effectively should be government-run institutions.
Can I just suggest that we are now getting a little bit into the weeds, and we're getting a little into the weeds because we're venturing into what could be deemed political differences, and what we're trying to do today. And I know you didn't start it, I know it came up before, so I'm not criticizing you, but I'm just saying I would rather that we try to stick to how money is corrupting all of those
institutions.
institutions.
Well, that's all money. That is all money in politics, because we have corporations making money from our prison system. It's effectively modernized slavery.
I
we
understand.
have corporations, we have pharmaceutical companies profiting off of our healthcare system, where you don't see that. For instance, in Canada, a pharmaceutical company is given 10 years to make a profit on a drug. After that, production's taken over by the state and it's sold at cost. Okay? Because there's an inherent understanding that the state does not have a right to profiteer off of certain things. But we don't have that in this country. So if you want to get money out of politics, you have to take the corporations out of certain areas that were never meant to be privatized in the first place.
Okay, if you want to respond, that's fine.
Well, we will simply never ever agree on that. There's just, yeah, we just will never agree on that.
Well, let's take another question in the back.
Okay, you mentioned a number of times the Constitution and the makers of the Constitution. God-given rights. And a lot of the money that I see going into politicians are actually from religious organizations. What are your feelings about, and that adds to a lot of the discourse that's going on today. What are your feelings about that? And how about people that have different religions or no religion at all? It's not necessarily God-given rights, these are natural rights.
For me, God-given rights are natural rights. And should churches get involved and give money to certain politicians and issues? Perhaps they should not. Many churches, my church would never do that, never get involved in that kind of stuff. Now they will, from the pulpit, talk about things, but we would never take any of the church's money and back a politician or an issue. Some churches do. I think that is kind of tied to move to amend and whether corporations and unions and all of that should be, you know, have an organization of folks and being able to use that leverage or that muscle. I think that's the category I would put that in. I never really thought about it, but I think it's related.
Yep, it's a corporation.
I'm wondering if you could tell us more about your vision of no ballot, no buck.
My vision of it, well, it's Bill's vision around where.
Well, expand if you could.
Well, it's pretty simple. If you're running for Congress over in Pennsylvania and I live here, I can't give you money because you're not going to represent me.
So that's campaign contributions. What about PACs?
Same thing. Same thing. Yeah. The concept basically, and Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, is we want the people who live in the electorate area to select the person. And the people in that area can give you money.
That seems pretty good. What do you think here, folks? What do you think? That seems pretty good.
Yeah, that's what we're doing.
So, as far as, you know, getting off of all these issues that we'll probably never completely agree with, I think one of the things that Move to Amend likes to clarify over and over again is that democracy, or a republic, if you prefer, is a messy business. And it always will be a messy business. We're not looking for utopia. What we're looking for is a level playing field where everybody has the opportunity to play and money doesn't buy the process. And that's our goal. And when we start talking about, you know, we'd love to talk about these things. That's what you do once you have a democracy. Then you have that fight, but we got to get the money out to get the level playing field.
I have a question, Ray. Often I wear this this button. What is it? Pure democracy. I'm not. Is that what it says? Pure or it's
Just democracy.
Just democracy.
Just democracy.
Thank
We're
you.
not asking for much.
Anyway.
Just democracy working as it should.
Okay, so I wear this button out in public places. And I like, for example, I play bridge at a public place. And people will come up to me, and sometimes I don't know what their affiliation is. Sometimes they know I'm a Democrat, and they'll say, is that about Trump? Sometimes I don't even know who they are, and they'll say, what's that about? And I tell them, and universally, people seem to agree. I would assume that some conservatives that have looked at the button that I have not known their affiliation have agreed. My question to you is this. A Move to Amend was started with a lot of progressives, people that were aligning for progressive reasons. Yet Bill is every bit as passionate. That's how we began this process. He was every bit as passionate about the same issue. Do you think it's more difficult to attract conservatives to this issue than it is for progressives?
No, I don't. I don't. This Trump guy that you guys adore, he's president of the United States because we're fed up. Trump is not the cause of the derision of this country. He's a symptom. He's the reason. He's what happened because of it. So we don't care. We don't care. So I think conservatives have come to this, the Move to Amend initiative all day long.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Deb?
I know Rob wants to see some more things. Ray, I want to shake your hand.
Thank you.
I agree with quite an awful lot of what you say. I'm not surprised at all. My mom's the Tea Party, so not a shock to me. So glad you came. Move to Amend is nonpartisan. Okay? I know that there's a perception that we're progressive. Move to Amend is nonpartisan. okay? We know everyone is in the same boat. And I think big money likes to paint move to amend as being leaning one way or another. But there are communities out there, like outside of Salt Lake City, Utah, and other communities in Ohio that are majority conservative voters that have voted and initiated and passed resolutions in support of a 28th Amendment to get big money out of politics. So I'm so glad everyone is here because it's so important, and I'm very thankful that Ray acknowledged the need for this. He's right, we need principled leaders, we need people who care, and our representatives should work for us. And we shouldn't be in this situation where something I think that's referenced as the Spencer report says that no matter what the law is that's brought up for vote, whether there's 0% of the population supporting it or 100% of the population supporting it, 30% of those proposed laws get passed. That's not okay. So I'm going off a tangent. I want to thank Ray, and I want to turn it over to Rob. He wants to talk a little bit about Better Angels and their get-together, as well as the National Convention for Move to Amend. That's June 21st through 24th this year.
Essentially what I want to do is I want to, I was going to go through the item that we passed out at the Better Angels meeting, but I'm not going to do that because most everybody was here. And for those that didn't see it, I have a copy of it and I can get it to you by email later. Unfortunately, I don't have copies. But I do want to talk about briefly about the lobby day that we had. It's been maybe almost a month. And there were the four of us, Peter and Naomi and Deborah and I, were at the lobby day. And we spoke to a cross-section of partisans when we were there. And we generally had a very nice reception. I wanted to ask if any of you would like to say anything about the experience of talking to legislators.
Well, one point which the speaker at a group I was at this week was making about lobbying is that you never get to talk to the representatives. You get to talk to their staff. But we had some very good conversations with staff members, and in many cases, we got their emails, we communicated with them, and they are an interesting category of people. They're very young, they're in the process of learning about politics, but they're also, I think, perhaps more open to arguments than some of the people that they work for. So I thought, initially I was really frustrated. They said, oh, Senator so-and-so is in a committee and Representative so-and-so is there. I thought, when the hell are we going to get to talk to the real people? But actually, I think, in retrospect, it was more valuable probably for us to be trying to open the minds of the staff people who actually are in the process of learning how to be politicians.
Mighty kind of you, but I don't buy it. The representative should have met you.
Yeah.
Well,
Jessica Miranda did meet with us.
and I got to meet with Representative Becker.
Yeah, John Becker.
And the first thing I learned was never wear heels to the State House. The second thing is I was actually quite shocked about how excited Representative Becker was about the legislation. I mean, we sat there, he opened up his folder, and I think, did we go through pretty much every document in there, Rob?
Yeah,
Because we went over, we
Yeah.
substantially went over time in our meeting with him, and he was so excited, and I was really shocked to hear him say that he didn't think it was broad enough. And that was, I was not expecting that from a Republican. I was expecting that meeting to go in a totally different direction than it actually did. So I was really, really happy there. And I think Jessica was probably the most iffy. She seemed a bit evasive in our meeting with her.
Jessica Miranda, who is the Democrat from the 28th House District, and John Becker, who is the self-proclaimed most conservative legislator
He also said that
in the House.
he said that if it comes to the Federalism Committee, he would put it forward. So that's a huge, huge thing, and it's to have him on board is a massive, massive.
Well, he didn't say he would support it, but
Yeah, but he said he would put it forward.
he would at least look at it.
Who else is on that committee, do you recall?
I can look it up for you.
No, I have to look it up.
Yeah,
I've known Becker for 10 years or more.
But I was shocked, he was really excited though. That was the main thing.
What would he think was not broad enough?
So, ask again.
Why?
It was not broad enough.
What wasn't broad enough about that?
For him?
Yeah.
Well, he was concerned about how this was going to affect current Ohio law. He said, what impact is this going to have on LLCs? What impact is this going to have on escorts? And he was getting into, he was getting like above my pay grade. And I said, essentially, the amendment is no ballot, no buck. You know what? If there has to be a limit, and if you are not living in that voting district of the person who you want to give money to, then you just can't do it. Or there has to be a firm limit. We set a limit of 10%, and which I think is a good limit. In the actual approval by Better Andrews, we modeled it after what was actually in the Oregon Constitution until Citizens United overturned it. What was in the Oregon Constitution is that you could accept up to 10% money from outside your voting district. 10% of the money that you raised for your campaign could come outside of your district. But if it exceeded 10%, then you would forfeit the election and lose the ability to run. And if you lost the election, you would lose the ability to run for 2 of the terms for which you were running. So,
And it's not that it was in the Constitution, it's still in their Constitution. They're
But
just not enforcing it because Citizens United pointed out that.
yeah.
So
Correct.
if we could get every state to put that in their Constitution, getting it ratified would be real easy.
You're right. Once the states start adopting something like that, and I think that we're well on the way. Deb, any other thing on the gathering in Columbus?
On the lobby day, there was also a press release. So we met in the press room and we gave a press conference, and there were close to 20 people there.
Yes.
My 2-year-old had a grand time.
Including media coverage.
And we're going to do it again, I'm quite sure. We'll do it again next year. So the resolution that we supported last year was supposed to be introduced this month in May, and that means it gets a new number, because every 2 years, if it hasn't been passed, it gets reintroduced.
But it has not been introduced as of yet. But anyway, anything else, Dick?
I just want to say, next month's meeting, Catherine Terser, this is a big deal. She's been part of it. Rob can tell you more than I can. But my ask is that you help spread the word. I mean, we should have 100 people next month, because she's dynamite. She knows her stuff. She's doing great work.
Who is she?
Catherine Terser. Rob, why don't you?
Okay, yeah. First of all, she was very active. Common Cause was formed in the early 70s after what was deemed to be the undue influence of money in the special interest money coming into politics. And in the 70s, it was kind of a joke. I remember one of the big contributions in that campaign was $400,000 from IT&T. And that was considered to be a very corrupting influence. And that's what got Common Cause started. Well, now that's like, that's like a bucket of warm spit compared to what goes into money now. But having said that, so that's Common Cause, but they have worked on a number, they are a I believe they are nonpartisan. Others may disagree, but she's an expert on a gerrymandering reform, and she's also an expert on state campaign finance laws and other situations. She was before she joined Common Cause in April 2012. She was the legislative director of Ohio Citizens Action. So she makes statewide appearances. She appears before the legislature on a regular basis. And I would also like to have 100 people here for that event, as I would have liked to have had 100 people here for today's event. But in any event, that will be on the third Sunday at the same time in the same place. I will also finally mention that I don't think any of you need it, but I can give you the website for, let me think, I guess that would be, yeah, Move to Amend, or the website, by the way, for Better Angels. So you can find of interest any of those two websites. But having said that, I think we are at a stopping point. Am I leaving anything out?
I just would like to make one comment, and that is about progressives versus liberals. Liberals got a bad name because it kind of went overboard buying into the whole money thing. I myself am a progressive, and the reason why I'm a progressive is not all change is progress, but all progress is change, and we will never live in a world that can't be better than it is today. And I think that's a point everybody in this room can agree with. And it's that kind of thing, when we learn to talk in that kind of language, and thank you, you did a great job today, Ray. When we learn to talk in that kind of language, we'll start crossing those barriers.
And I would also like to thank you, Ray, for making the trip. I know it's a little bit longer for you than it is for some of us. And so I very much appreciate you kind of breaking ground here for us.
Well, thanks for inviting me. Enjoyed it.
Next meeting is going to be on the 16th of June. Is that correct? That's the third Sunday.
Yes.
Yes.
That's
it
Father's
is-
Day.
It is Father's Day.
Yeah.
The reason, and we
did have a debate about this because it is Father's Day, and I know we didn't have our leadership meeting on Mother's Day, but the National
That shows the
DC
priority.
Convention in June is the fourth Sunday, and we didn't want to double book and have the local public meeting on the same day as the national convention. So if people think after this June that we shouldn't meet on Father's Day next year, I will agree with you, because the same thing happened with our Cub Scouts, where one year, yeah, we did stuff on Father's Day, and then we said maybe not. So thank you.
Okay, thank you all, and have a great day.
Thanks, Ray.